So I guess it's time to start.
Yep.
Welcome everybody to the Manet Working Group meeting. This is the note. If this is not your first meeting, or if it is your first meeting and it's not the first session of this week, then you will have seen this. If not, take good care of all the important do's and don'ts listed on this sheet. They are important. Here are a couple of online meeting tips that are part of the standard slide set and that I should have followed myself. So more information. And now we get to the actual working group specific slides. My co-chair is Don Veddik. I'm Ron Infeld. Our responsible AED is Alvaro. Hi, Alvaro. And Don is our brand new co-chair. But he's not new to the IETF at all. And he's also an active participant in the IEEE, I believe in the 802.1 group. But maybe you want to give a short introduction yourself.
Yeah, sure. I've been in the IETF for many years, and also in the IEEE. I've spent quite a bit of time in 802.1 and lately in the security area. And in the IETF, I've been doing some work in DetNet and IPsec-ME. Okay. Yeah. I don't hear you, Ron.
Why does it do that? It asks for permission to use my microphone again. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, good. So we go through some document status, and then the bigger part of this session is devoted to future work. I have some ideas on the slide on things that we could work on. Most of them are actually covered by our charter, but have been neglected for the last 2 years, 3 years maybe. And I just want to see if there's interest and energy in the working group to pick up some of these items at least. And we'll take it from there. But first, oh, by the way, I should have asked if anybody is willing to take some notes in CodeMT. If not, then I'll do the same thing that I did last time, and that is look at the recording and make the minutes from there. But if you can make some notes, however sketchy, that's already helpful. I should have asked on the mailing list, sorry, didn't get around to that. So, to the documents, we have 3 working group documents that have been in working group last call for longer than I care to remember. I think it was our previous chair, Justin Dean, who actually put them in working group last call, but now they're finally completed, and they are completed because at least one person generated some comments on these drafts, and that person was me, unfortunately. As we speak, one of the authors, Lou Berger, is producing updates of these internet drafts to iron out the last nits that were found. And as was already indicated by Alvaro during last meeting, the next step for these documents will be to send them to the Transport Area Directorate for some early review. And then they will proceed through all the steps that come after the working group has lost call these documents. So they should be finally be on their way to become RFCs. We have another document from the same author set, which was somewhat left behind for no good reason, actually. It really belongs to the same set as the three drafts discussed above. And I have initiated a final adoption call for this thing a couple of weeks ago, and it ended last Saturday. There was some comment from Henning Rogge, who's unfortunately not here tonight, as far as I can see. But he called actually the whole approach in question of the splitting of the documents. These flow control related drafts started out as a single internet draft, and then after some discussion in the working group a long time ago, it was decided to split them for reasons that seemed very valid at the time. And with these documents having been in working group last call for so long, it seems a bit, well, it's impossible to go back on that now. So I've noted the comments on the DLab Ether credit extension as made by Henning Rogge on the mailing list, but I think that it's too late to change the approach now, and I consider this internet draft as adopted, unless there's now a massive protest. So I would like to hear that. Nobody in the queue. And then we have 3 more documents that were written or submitted just before the last meeting, and that are still awaiting comments. I'll come back to those later. But actually, I would like now to switch to a different set of slides and give the floor to Lou Berger.
All right, thank you. So I put these together before I knew what before I saw the updated agenda. So I'll defer to the chairs if they want me to go at a different rate or cover different material. They've seen the slide deck. So I'm going to do something odd. The chairs should feel free to flip to the next slide or flip to whatever slide they would like me to talk about, just because things got reorganized a little bit. So take me where you want me to talk.
I suggest you just go through them.
Sure. Then next. So I'm talking through several documents. We heard Ronald give the status on them. While my name is on the slide deck, each of these documents do have co-authors who are not in attendance for various reasons. As Ronald said, the first three were wrapping up last call. I've been a little slow on getting the updates out. I wanted them last week, but I said I would get them before this meeting, and I succeeded. So the responses are there, and I've updated the documents. I pushed the publication request on all of them. One of them requires Secretariat processing, sent off a request for that. Document numbers are cheap, so if someone doesn't like the changes or wants different changes, we'll certainly rev the documents again. We've been through the adoption calls on the Ether credit and chairs. I've heard just now that this is adopted. Do you want me to just immediately resubmit with draft IETF?
If you could take a look at the comments that I provided also for this document. Maybe you have done that already in the last hour or so. It wasn't following.
I didn't see I didn't notice your comments, so I apologize for missing that. Actually, a couple of your messages got filtered, including the last one that I just responded to, which you had sent privately. I found one of them, but obviously not this one. I'll tell you that I did make changes to parallel the DA credit extension. So if it's just the same comments I've already made that you did on DA credit, I've already made those, even though I didn't see those comments. So I'll take a look and do an update. Do you want me to do the update first? If you want me, I can either publish what went through the adoption call as the 00, or make the fixes and then publish that as 00, your call.
I would prefer you to make the fixes first and then issue it as a working group document.
I'll do that. Okay.
And if you have lost them, then I can send them again. But I seem to remember that I sent my comments on the same day as the traffic classification and the.
I just missed it somehow with filtering. It probably, I'm sure I have it. I will reach out to you if I don't.
And otherwise they are in the mailing list archive.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll have a updated rev of the draft burger done before the end of this meeting. How's that? Assuming
excellent.
That there's other agenda items yeah. Okay. Questions from the list. I was hoping Henning would be here so we could talk through them. One of them is why have extensions with no data items? Ronald, I think you covered that well. We had a long history. I have a slide on it if we want to recap it in more depth, but I think you covered that well. And why use TID versus LID? Some of it is historical because LID was not present at the time we did TID originally. The other thing is I don't think we want to require LID all the time just to use these new extensions. And on list, I mentioned that if we were to follow through with Henning's proposal, we would have to respin that RFC and basically hit reset on these documents. So I think even if we accepted LID, it's a major process piece. But also from the technical standpoint, I disagree that it's the right solution. I see Rick Taylor in queue.
Yeah, Rick is in the queue. So go ahead, Rick.
Hi, everybody. I agree with Lou. I can see Henning's point of why do we need another discriminator that we have to handle in our implementations. But from my perspective, a lid is a very specific identifier to say that there are multiple layer 3 addressable destinations beyond the MAC address you are using currently to identify. And a TID means something else. And just reusing the identifier to mean two different things, I think gets immediately confusing and becomes context sensitive. And then how do I perform an implementation which supports multiple TIDs per lid? for example. So yes, they're both just integer identifiers, but let's not mash them together because they're the same data type. I think that's the wrong approach.
Yeah, another potential problem that I see, and that this may pop up if we have any further DLB extensions, is that you create an interdependency between extensions. So you could only use.
So by forcing someone to implement lid just to support traffic classification, I think is a mistake.
Yes. But what if your modem says that it supports TID or credit extensions, but not link identifiers?
I'm in agreement. Yeah, from a programming perspective, from an implementation perspective, I can see Henning's point, but I think conceptually it's a mistake to do it.
Okay. So he's not here to raise the point, but again, but I will confirm on the mailing list that we consider this thing a work group document now, and I think we can working group last call. It's very soon, but there is some room for further discussion within the working group. It's only been adopted as a working group document. It's not working group last call yet, so there is still a window for making further comments for this one. However, I would like to send it running after the other documents pretty soon. And I think that Lou will only be happy about that. So Lou, do you want to continue with your presentation?
Your call. As I said, you are driving the slide, so I will follow you.
Yeah.
But I appreciate it, and of course, my comments were sent to the list, so if Henning wants to take the discussion up there, we can take it up further.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you've already covered these items. I'll just point out that there is a somewhat old implementation available on GitHub, and if you are interested, please look at it. I think actually there's room for someone to take over driving that, just because I know that there's been pull requests on it for a while. Not sure if there's anyone in the group who's interested, but I figured I'd put out that public service announcement. So
say that again, please. I missed that.
I shouldn't have. Go back 2 slides. I'm just mentioning that GitHub DLEP implementation from Lincoln Labs has had pull requests against it for a little while, and there might be an opportunity for someone to take over supporting that implementation or fork it into another repo and give it a little more TLC, tender loving care, so a little more attention. And I figured I'd mention that because people in this room or listening to this recording are the ones who are likely to be the ones to take it on. I don't know what the plans are from the group that put that out. I just observed that the pull requests have been sitting there for a while. It looks like Rick wants to respond to that.
Last time I looked. Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Rick.
So yeah, some of the pull requests actually came from my team. So what we've done in the meantime is we have a fork of that also on GitHub, which I will find the URL in the chat. It's a clone with the pull requests merged together, which we've been using extensively. I also support if somebody wants to take it on because my team doesn't have the bandwidth to do this at the moment. It would be great if this was adopted by the community. So anyone listening who wants to pull all this together, that's great. I'm just saying those pull requests are valid and there are some bug fixes. It needs a bit of TLC really.
Good to know. With my chair hat off, I'm interested. I want to get this working again with against email.
It is being used quite heavily by several people in a large European consortium. So we recommend it to various people. So it is getting proper use. It's for test beds and interop testing. It's a really useful tool, and it would be a pity if it rusted away.
Okay. If you can provide the link, then that would be excellent.
Yeah, I'd suggest putting it on the list unless the chairs think otherwise.
Put it on the list.
Great. This is the history on how things got broken, a little bit about how they got broken apart, and when. This actually was based on discussion at IETF 101 and 102. If you do the math, that's a long time ago. And basically, we started out with one document, then went to 2 documents, and then ended up in 4. And the thought is that we can take a building block approach in the base documents and then negotiate which of the building blocks we're using and how we're combining them using the credit extensions. So the extensions. So the extensions say how to combine the base data items or the base objects, and it allows you to avoid exactly the problem that I can't remember, Ronald, or either you brought up or Rick brought up, is where you have to implement part of a specification that you don't really care about because it's derivative. And that was the reason at the time. I'm going to give Rick credit for being the strong advocate for this. It may not have been, my memory may be foggy, but it actually resonates with me, and I think it is a good approach.
Okay, I'm going to speed up a little bit.
As I said, you go your speed.
Yeah.
Tell me what you'd like me to talk about. You had asked something privately on the difference between TID and FID. Would you like to jump right there?
No, I thought that people might be confused about that, but
okay. So we have two we have 2 different types of extensions for flow control. One of them is using a link-based mechanism, the pause extension. That's really sort of like X on, X off, and it is it's really very coarse because you can either pause on the link basis or on a priority basis, but not on a destination basis. And there's certainly some channels out there where you might want to pause to one endpoint but not the other, and that's what we get with the credit flow control. The credit flow control also is a method of it's sort of a window-based approach. So rather than X on, X off, you can get credits. I like to characterize one as work conserving and one non-work conserving, but that's a little coarse. In that, I think with the credit extension, you can actually keep the link a little busier than you could with the pause. But that depends a little bit on the time windows.
Yeah,
and the implementations.
On your queue size on the router side, probably.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Did you skip one?
Yeah, there's a nasty window over my slide thing.
I think it's pretty funny that window. Okay. Back 2, please. All right. So the basic operation is that the credit windows and the traffic identification pieces are given in the session. The difference, you'll notice there's a term here, flow identifier and traffic class identifier. And the difference is one is about the treatment and really about queue management, and that's the flow identifier. And the other one is about traffic classification, and that's the traffic classification identifier. And what do I mean by classification is what fields in the header do you use to map traffic to the particular queuing treatment? So really that's the difference between TID and FID. Hopefully that's clear. If it's not, come to the queue. And we support the mapping a flow to a particular traffic class. So you can do traffic classification on that. Okay, next. If you run out of credits, we have some ability to request credits and also give credits. And this reviews the messages that are used for it. I copied and pasted this from an old presentation. In the bottom left, it actually is a mistake I didn't update. So you can actually see when this slide was originally presented.
Okay.
Or maybe most recently presented. So again,
for the nitty-gritty details, see the documents. Okay, I'm going to switch to the next presentation, if you don't mind.
Not at all. Thank you for the time and comments, and also moving this forward.
Yeah, implicitly we have covered item 3 on the agenda. I already talked about that. We consider this the ether-based approach as a working group document now, and nobody was rushing to the microphone to protest. So I'll just confirm this on the mailing list, and we proceed as agreed. I have one slide on Henning Rogger's 3 drafts that are all physical layer related. I am in the process of reviewing them. I have provided comments on the one about general utilization. What Henning does is actually define 4 new data items. And the draft currently does not state in which messages these data items are to be used. But what I was really wondering about is why he does not let the modem calculate the channel utilization, instead of sending these individual parameters to the router and let the router sort it out. Rick knows the answer to that one. Go ahead.
No, I don't, but I agree with your question. So I know Stan and the team's original idea with DLEP was that the modem should give the router information that the router understands. And my concern with these 3 extensions is they're really telling the router about layer 1, layer 2 layer 1 information, really, that in terms that maybe don't make sense at layer 3. Now, the counter argument from Henning has always been, yes, but you could be doing some very clever calculation within your router, or some AI that's doing some predictive stuff, or all kinds of exciting modern techniques. So just getting the information is useful. But I agree that I would prefer to see slightly more condensed information, or perhaps have all of this as one extension and say, look, here's a load of radio layer channel information that the modem can hand out. But I share your concerns, Ronald.
Okay, good. Maybe you can say something like that on the mailing list. I know that have commented.
I'll say it again.
Yeah, I know that you've commented 3 months ago when they were initially submitted, but it can't hurt to repeat that. Actually, I think the radio band one is almost ready for working group adoption. I can see a use for that, but I will say why on the mailing list. The radio quality one, I haven't really taken a long hard look at it. It provides, or can provide, several kinds of information: signal to noise ratio, radio signal strength indicator, and again, yeah, there I share some of the ideas that Rick was just expressing, that this is maybe too low level information for the router. But yeah. Lou, do you have a comment?
I'm going to say something similar, where it's just it applies to all of these. In anticipation of this discussion, I went and reviewed all of them, and they look interesting, but none of them have, you call it out on this first one, motivation. So, what is the router supposed to do with this? And if it, take it and pass it to some magic, AI thing, I think that was what Rick said. Sure, that's fine, but it should say it. And I think without that, I'm not sure it makes sense to adopt these. Now, that said, I think these are really interesting, and I'd like to learn how we should be using them.
Yeah. So maybe it's just a matter of providing some more text in the introduction to motivate why they are there. And I remember that the link identifier draft in its first incarnation was also very terse, and that got fixed later. So it is possible, I guess. Let me see. Yeah. Okay, I think we are almost on time. Okay, this is hopefully the most interactive part of this session. I'm just going to throw out some ideas, and if you think they're good or bad, or you're interested to work on them, I would like to hear that, because it will determine where we go. I took a look at the current charter. I think we have had this charter since 2016, so long before I became a chair. The parts in green, I think, are covered. We have done almost nothing but DLab work in the last few years. Just after the recharter, multicast seemed to have a lot of interest, and I will quickly go to an old presentation by Justin Dean in a minute. And then we have a charter item on a document that we were supposed to produce on outlining challenges and best practices for deploying and managing MANET networks. I'll come back to that. And at the same time, we still have a role in maintaining OLSR v2 and friends and extensions. And another thing I noticed is that we have a couple of experimental documents, RFCs, that may or may not become standard tracks document at some time. I know Henning has done a lot of work on the directional airtime metric. He is the original author. Over the last few years, I think we have gained quite some experience with that metric, and I wonder, it's again a pity that he is not here, but I wonder if he, for instance, would be interested to take this to standards track, or anybody else, of course. And
there's a question on the chat window.
I'm not seeing that at the moment, but yes, please.
The question is, do we have any feedback from the chairs on the latest OLSR2 OLSR v2 queries seen on the list?
Actually, that's in my next slide. Yeah, let's go to that. This chair, at least, still has to wrap his head around the problem, because I'm not that deep into the details of OLSR v2, but there is indeed, I was sort of present when Henning Rogge discovered this. I was part of the same event where this emerged. And there we were in an OLSR version 2 network restarting routers very frequently, and sometimes they didn't find each other again. They were no longer able to accept each other's topology control messages, and this had to do with receiving routers thinking that advertised neighbor sequence numbers were stale. So the messages were stale, and therefore they were ignoring them. Now Henning has made a description of the problem on the mailing list. What was very nice to see is that former chair Justin Dean and former main contributor, or one of the main contributors to OLSR v2, Christopher Deerloff, who is retired, responded and have this discussion, have been discussing with Henning what would be the best approach to fix this. And as things stand now, and as far as I understand, there is some idea to produce an informational RFC with some guidance on how to avoid this problem. And the way it looks now, it will not be needed to actually make modifications to the protocol. But as I said, the discussion is ongoing, and I'm planning to dive deeper into this so that I also understand exactly what's going on. But at the moment, it's between Henning and Christopher mostly, and I'm trying to understand what they're saying. But I think it would be great because Christopher even offered to help with drafting such a document, and I think that would be very good. I hope that answers the question. I don't know who the question was coming from, actually. But...
It was me, Ronald, and yes, thank you. I was just asking as a point of order, but that's great. You've covered it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, where do we stand with multicast? Previously, a long time ago, simplified multicast forwarding was done as an experimental RFC. SMAP is not even a real protocol. It describes some ways to do smart flooding. By doing duplicate packet detection, it specifies several techniques for doing duplicate packet detection, and then in the appendices it has several examples of techniques for relay set reduction, so that not every node in your MANET environment is resubmitting, retransmitting packets to flood them to everyone, but just a selected few, and then you can use the information from your unicast routing protocol, the NPRs, from OLSR V2, for example, to reduce that. Rick?
I was just joining the queue till the end of this slide because I'm going to say so.
Okay. Now, as I said, after the recharter in 2016, Justin Dean gave a presentation at the Berlin IETF 96, outlining his ideas for what to do on multicast. And I have uploaded that presentation again as part of the meeting materials for this meeting, and I'll briefly go over it. I got his approval to do that. And part of that is also an even older document on elastic multicast routing protocol that was written and presented in the last meeting of 2013 by Brian Adamson, a colleague of Justin. And that says that you can do more intelligent things than smart flooding, building an actual multicast tree, as long as certain sections of your network are relatively stable. And the idea was never picked up by the working group, but I know that NRL has been progressing this internally. And in fact, if you look at NRL SMF, their implementation on GitHub, then you see that there's quite a bit of support code for that already. Another oddball, I would almost say, is the on-demand multicast routing protocol, which is very old. It says its origins in 2002, I think, but was at some point revived in 2014, and then those people went away again. But last year, I suddenly heard this mentioned again by a colleague of Henning. So maybe there's some interest there to pick that up. And the interesting thing about on-demand multicast routing protocol is that it actually takes group membership into account, which SMF does not. Then, Rick, you mentioned beer already several times, and I still haven't been able to wrap my head around that and determine whether that's actually a viable technology in a MANET, but I will.
Just commenting on the beer comment, Rick Taylor here. The reason I raised beer is a technique that has very much developed since we've been talking about multicast in MANETs. So you've got comments on here looking back at things from 2013 and earlier. Beer has arrived since then, and I wonder whether there hasn't been people looking at it. I wonder whether you could flood beer membership and then build your trees on top of it, or something. I haven't got the cycles to look at it. It was just, that was why I raised the comment on beer.
Personally, I will try to free up some cycles to look at it, because it's interesting to me. Yeah, there is a reason why multicast is different and difficult in mobile ad hoc networks. PIM sparse mode does not work, we know.
So can I add my comment now at the end of this slide?
Of course.
I'm going to be contentious and
sure.
say that I think multicast in MANETs is being addressed at the link layer. From everything I'm seeing happening in the industry, the radio vendors, because they can do clever things at the radio layer with overhearing, and they have more immediate understanding about which terminals are online and what's happening at the RF layer, they're tackling it. And I'm seeing radios now, IP radios appearing on the market saying, yes, we just do multicast. as a router, give me your multicast traffic and we'll sort it for you. And so I'm wondering whether this work actually still has a home in the IETF, or whether it's being done in academia and being handled in 802.11 or 802.15 or in various non-IEEE environments, and the link layer community will solve this for their own specific types of link layer.
That's, you could be right there. On the other hand, that only works if everybody is using the same link layer, and in a heterogeneous environment, you may still want to do something different.
Yes, I agree. But I think you would then be bridging multicast capable or joining multicast capable subnets together at layer 3, where something like source specific some PIM variation, or perhaps going back to my previous point, beer, some existing multicast technology at layer 3 will handle it. It's an interesting piece. I don't know.
But that's fine. But what we then need is a small group of people, preferably larger than one.
Yes.
Which takes a look at that, and if none of the 4 bullet points that I listed first are of interest anymore, but there is some way to do this bridging, as you call it, that's fine too. That could be a subject too. Lou?
I'm going to maybe disagree with Rick.
Good.
So I talked to him about maybe on the next slide or next topic, bringing in what's happening in RAW, which Rick chairs. And I'll point out to Rick that there's discussion in RAW about IP-aware multicast running integrated with the radios. So, in that context, there's someone arguing against the point that you made.
Okay, I'll respond. Yes, I'm well aware that that's happening within the context of RAW, but I think that's happening in negotiation with the capabilities of the link layer. So the link layer is solving the how is it happening, and RAW is using that capability in order to deliver determinism.
Yeah, I think that's not clear in the discussions in RAW, and
no, it isn't.
The comment. Agree. What's that?
I agree. It's not clear.
Yeah. So I think the comment which belongs on the next topic is there may be work coming in from RAW or some protocol work that's being defined in RAW, which is not currently chartered to do protocol work, that may end up here at some point. But I think it's still sorting its way out there.
Yeah, we're very much in that writing architecture documents, and I think most of the people I can see on the attendees list here were actually in RAW as well, which was great. But so RAW's very much doing the use cases, the architecture, the technologies piece, and it would be great to bring some of the protocol development into MANET, because MANET has the wealth of experience with doing it. But there's still big open questions about multicast. But I'll cede my place in the line.
Yeah, and I just noticed a comment by Alvaro in the mailing list, in the chat. Right, moving on. Just to finish this slide set. We have this work item about, as I said, outlining challenges and best practices for deploying and managing networks. Well, I brought this up before, but we can silently ignore it or remove it altogether. But I don't think that. But please contradict me if I got it wrong. But I don't think that that anybody will come forward and say, yes, this is how you should deploy and manage your manets based on our experience. Because I think those who are running actual real life Manets will keep that knowledge to themselves. Alvaro.
I guess I just want to say that I agree with you. I think we ended up with this item in the charter as some sort of compromise from earlier documents that didn't say how you would manage the network. Right? We were finding, I don't know, LSR or whatever, and it wasn't clear how the network would be managed. There was a draft that I ended up killing because it was OLSR specific, I think, on management, and what we wanted was a more general one. I think that as we recharter, depending on what changes we put in the charter, maybe we can just silently ignore and no one will notice. But we may still run the risk that that someone wants to put something in here, and we'll have to explain to them, why normal or traditional management is not going to work in a Manet, right? The topologies unstable, especially, and so the same goes for like Yang models and things like that.
Well, what I've been thinking about, and Rick knows this, in the DTN working group, there's a thing called asynchronous management architecture, and that's for DTN. But I think as far as I understand it, a large part of it would also be applicable to Manets. Rick may come, but I first give Ronnie Bull the microphone and a chance to react. Ronnie, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, from what I've seen, it's too diverse of a problem to really put a set of standards or best practices to. You have many different protocols people may be using, so it's really a challenging problem to do in this environment. So I think I agree with what's being said. I'll defer to Rick now.
Rick.
So I was going to pretty much underline what you just said, Ronald. I think the asynchronous management protocol stack that's being developed in DTN may well cover the Manet management use cases which can't be covered by traditional networking that's handled in the normal ops area of the IETF. So I think you're right, Alvaro, that the Manet straddles the point where your traditional management no longer functions. But I think at that point, DTN have a fairly mature is the wrong word, a fairly good idea of how to manage this that is being standardized. And we're very happy to share the work. We've got enough work in DTN. Actually, we spent 2 years trying to find another home for this work, but it's stuck in DTN at the moment.
Officially stuck, or is it stuck with because you didn't find a home? So yeah, I remember a while ago we were talking with Spencer and you and someone else about maybe moving that work to Manet.
Yeah.
So is DTN charter for that, or is it just there because there's no other place?
So we went round on it about 4 times and came to the conclusion that because DTN's a bit of a microcosm of its own making, so although it's in transport, the nature of the deeply delayed and disrupted networks we're building solutions for, the management sort of lives with it, and there's the open question on routing. But the management is now in our rechartering text that is, it's now sat with the AD, so I think we've got it now. And we're happy to do it, and that's has the consensus of the working group that they wish to work on it within DTN. And without being rude to this community, I think we have more participants in the DTN working group than we do in Manet. So I'm happy, and there's a lot of crossover. So I'm happy it's getting the eyes it needs, and I think that's the most important thing, really.
Yeah, and with the main driving force between the asynchronous management architecture and now being a DTN chair, I think it will be taken good care of.
It helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So, and the young models was something that came up in my preparation call with Don, because Young was not so popular at the time that, for instance, OSR v2 was done. So there are MIPS, but no Yang models. But maybe there shouldn't be. I don't know. I hear what you were just saying. Okay. I was going to go over the old presentation of Justin, but I see that we are almost out of time. So I'm going to skip to this slide again and then discuss the last bullet. I gave a presentation back in Montreal 2 years ago over the need to connect different MANET enclaves, so to speak. And there, the point that Rick just made is very valid. There may be several proprietary MANET solutions doing multicast and probably also unicast at layer 2. But somehow you need to connect these together. And that's also something that we can work on. And so, some people have different ideas about this. Henning, for instance, thinks that we can perfectly do this with OSR version 2. And I've been dabbling with my own protocol, but we have 3 minutes left, I see, so let's not go into that now unless some people have some comments. I know that in the past Ronnie Bull expressed interest and I never got back to him on that, so my apologies for that, Ronnie. So for multicast, and I'll bring this up on the list, but I really would like to see if we can have a small group to explore what is possible. And maybe do even an interim on that if we get anywhere. And if not, then maybe one of the other subjects of items of this list. I certainly hope that the OSR version 2 maintenance work will get off the ground, and we do this informational RFC. And I'm willing to help with that myself as soon as I understand the issue. With that, I think we're almost out of time. So thanks for your attention, for your presentations, for your questions, and probably see you online some other time, and maybe in the further future in real life, I hope. So thanks.
Just checking the chat window to see if there was anything else.
Thanks very much, Chairs, by the way.
Since you asked, is there anything else in there that I put in the updated document? that Ronald mentioned. I found his review and posted the update. I also submitted the 00 document for your approval whenever you're ready.
Yep.
Which basically equals exactly the last version of the one I just uploaded.
So over here it's 2:30 in the morning. So do you mind if I defer this to the other side of a couple of hours of sleep, or
Absolutely. Thank you for everything. Appreciate it.
Yep. Okay. Bye all.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And thanks, Don.
I tried to take some notes, so we'll see how they go.
Thank you. Yeah. Good.
Lou helped.
I did not even open the Code DMP window.